Have you ever felt like your money isn't entirely, well, yours? Maybe burdened by fees or worried about inflation, or just wondering if your financial future is actually in your hands? Today, we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating idea called bullion. We're drawing straight from their own material, specifically something called bullion, a path to financial freedom with gold.
That's right. And our goal here is really to unpack what they're saying. We want to look at the problems they see with, traditional finance and then explore this alternative path they're proposing towards financial freedom. We'll pull out the key ideas, get into the mechanics of how it's supposed to work, and figure out what it's really trying to achieve for people who want more control over their own money.
Okay, let's dig in. So the source material, it immediately kind of sets up this contrast, doesn't it? It talks about a past where finance was supposedly dignified and trustworthy. But then it pivots fast to today, saying institutions just aren't as reliable anymore. And it's not just complaining about fees. It feels like a deeper critique, almost a challenge to the whole idea of centralized finance.
Yeah, a real sense of distrust in the intermediaries.
Exactly. And they really focus on banks, calling them a source of negativity, loading people up with fees and all kinds of costs. And they highlight this pretty stark risk that depositors could lose everything if a bank goes under. That's quite the opening shot.
It is, and it goes broader than just banks. The source points out something important, that people are, and I'm quoting here, rarely trained to manage their own financial affairs.
Right, which kind of creates this dependence.
Precisely, a dependence on others. And they even mention cases where people are deceived and their money disappears. It even suggests that big institutions, like in healthcare, can abuse your trust. It really makes you think about who we're trusting, doesn't it?
It does. And they bring it very specifically to the South African context, too, claiming the country is controlled by a central bank that overregulates everything.
Yes, they position that as a major hurdle for people trying to manage their finances there. And just to be clear for everyone listening, this is their specific take on the regulatory situation, the problem as they see it.
Yeah, it keeps coming back to this theme of control, The source literally says, the financial institutions tell you what you are allowed to do with your own money, even if it is yours. And they give examples like having to tell your bank if you move house, or getting letters from SARS, that's the revenue service, needing your bank details again. They frame it like these institutions want to control people, push them in directions they maybe don't want to go.
And tying into that control aspect is their view on fiat currency. Government-issued money like the rand that isn't backed by gold or something physical.
Right.
They make the point, if you have $100,000 in bank, inflation eats away at that money. It's getting less every day. Plus, you've got costs, taxes, all these other expenses chipping away at it.
So it's not just the fees or the risk of collapse. It's the money itself losing value over time. That's something most people can probably relate to, watching prices go up.
Exactly. It's about that slow erosion of purchasing power.
Okay, so we've laid out the problems bullion sees. Fees, inflation risk, this perceived lack of control. So who's the hero in their story? What's the proposed solution for finding this financial freedom?
Well, that's where bullying itself comes in. The source explains it started with a few men putting their heads together.
Right.
And they created this thing they call a cooperative that is private and works for its members exclusively. And yeah, the name Bullion, it points directly to gold being central to their idea.
So what's the core philosophy then? What are they actually trying to do?
Well, according to the source, it's about empowering people, helping them take control of their own lives and manage your finances yourself. It's a bold claim, really. They say bullion was created to give people freedom.
Freedom from what specifically?
Freedom from what they describe as an oppressive, addictive system. They even bring in this philosophical or maybe theological angle, calling gold the creator's currency. And there's a reference to the Bible in there, too.
Interesting framing.
Yeah, it definitely elevates gold beyond just, a commodity. It gives it this deeper significance in their view. And again, just to be clear, we're just relaying how the source presents this idea.
Understood.
And then there's this really striking bit about control. It makes a very politically charged comparison. He says, communism does two things. It grabs your finances and your food supply.
Ooh.
Yeah. If you control these two, you control people and you can do whatever you want with them. So, and again, this is their specific ideological viewpoint, they position bullion as the antidote to that kind of control. It's meant to bring liberation through financial independence.
Okay, that's quite a statement. Yeah. Very ideologically loaded. But let's get practical. How does this liberation actually work day to day? What's the advice?
The immediate advice is pretty blunt. Don't leave your money in a currency that loses value. Simple as that.
Okay, so what do?
You convert your capital into assets. That's the key instruction.
And what kind of assets are we talking about?
Primarily, they recommend gold, silver, or palladium, precious metals, tangible things.
Right.
They do also mention investing in cryptocurrencies as an option, but there's this underlying warning about holding onto a worthless currency. So sounds like you need to choose carefully, maybe manage it actively.
Okay, so you convert your rands or whatever currency into these assets. They give an example, don't they? Something about R100,000.
They do. It helps make it concrete. They say, okay, say you have R100,000 and decide to buy R60,000 worth of gold.
How does that work? You don't just get a lump of gold, do you?
Not necessarily, not right away.
Yeah.
The idea is you buy gold units in the gold pool. You're pooling your money with other people who are also seeking, this financial freedom.
A gold pool. So like fractional ownership. How does that work technically? Is it like a trust?
The source describes it as Bullion collectively buying the gold. So they pool everyone's funds, probably buy larger bars, which might be more cost effective, and you own units that represent your share of that pool.
Okay.
And they really stress the control aspect here. They say once you have enough gold to convert it into actual gold, you can do that and it can then be delivered to you. So you stay in control.
Or you can just leave it there.
Or you can just leave it in the pool, let it potentially grow as an asset. The aim seems to be making physical gold more accessible than if you tried to buy small amounts yourself.
What if you need cash, though? Say you need money for an emergency. Is your money locked up in these gold units?
Good question. The source says if you need cash, you can sell your gold or part of it and convert it into cash.
Okay, but how quick is that? Are there fees involved in selling back? The source doesn't detail that.
It doesn't go into the specific timelines or costs for selling back to cash, no, but it actually suggests you might not need to convert to cash all the time. They talk about alternative payment methods. Like what? Paying directly with gold.
Yeah, or crypto or silver. The example given is buying a car. You can pay the dealer with gold if he is also on the system.
Huh. If the dealer is part of Bullion, too, you mean?
Presumably, yeah. Or pay with crypto or silver. They even mention that many supermarkets already accept cryptocurrency as payment. So they're painting this picture of a whole alternative financial ecosystem.
Interesting. Almost bypassing cash entirely sometimes.
That seems to be the vision.
And then there's this other layer they mention, something they call the icing on the cake, a global bank account. What's that about?
Yeah, that's a big claim. The source says Bullion opens a global bank account for you.
Okay. Backed by whom? How does that work?
It says this account is backed by 2 strong international banks. And crucially, these banks apparently operate on an international basis and are not regulated by the South African Reserve Bank.
So outside of local regulation, that raises questions like which banks, what jurisdiction, are they traditional banks? Right, the source doesn't specify the banks or the exact legal structure, but it emphasizes the security and freedom this offers. So you can move your money however you want, no one else has access to your account, and your money is safe abroad.
So it directly addresses those earlier concerns about domestic issues or overregulation, offering an escape route almost.
That seems to be the angle, yes. A way to keep funds perceived as safer internationally outside the reach of the local system they critique.
Okay, so it circles back again to asset stability and having control, possibly even across borders. They stress that the most important thing is to keep your money in assets that can be sold quickly.
And they contrast that directly with things like houses or cars.
Right, saying homes and cars don't sell quickly, but gold brings stability. They're really positioning gold as the key liquid, stable.
And they tie it to current global move, noting, the world currently loves gold because it is a stable currency, tapping into that general feeling of uncertainty and the search for safe havens.
And it's not just gold going forward.
Apparently not. The source mentions Bullion will also add other commodities going forward that you can invest in for security. So maybe diversifying beyond just gold into other physical assets.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've gone through quite a bit. What's the big takeaway for you, our listener, from this deep dive into Bullion's materials?
Well, it really presents itself as this comprehensive alternative for people feeling let down by traditional finance. People seeking more control, more freedom.
Yeah, it's advocating a pretty fundamental shift, isn't it? Away from banks and fiat currency towards assets, specifically precious metals, as a response to perceived unreliability and lack of control.
Exactly. The core message is about empowerment, giving individuals the tools, or so they claim, to manage their finances directly, offering choices in how you hold your capital: gold, silver, maybe crypto, and even how you transact.
And adding that global element for security, moving funds potentially outside of domestic regulations they see as problematic.
Right. It's all about emphasizing that direct control over your assets.
And the source itself, it has a pretty direct call to action at the end, doesn't it?
It does. It says, get involved as soon as possible. Don't procrastinate. It also mentions that it's cheap to become a member.
And it encourages people to try it out for themselves. Test the system. Don't just accept it. You'll quickly notice it works. That's quite confident.
Very confident, yes.
So it leaves us with a lot to think about. In a world where, let's face it, financial systems are changing fast, and trust in the old institutions is definitely being questioned. It makes you wonder, what does true financial freedom really look like to you? And maybe more importantly, what steps might you actually consider taking to try and achieve it? Something to mull over.